Hey everybody, I think we're going to get started now, and I don't expect many people to show up on a Friday night, but I see two people have, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Tonight I'm going to try to answer a whole bunch of different things that have been asked of me over private messages and emails, and just over time I've kind of accumulated a lot of stuff where people have been asking questions, and it's, you know, I know I come across many times in some of my videos and some of my responses as being kind of a jerk, but you need to understand the frame of mind I have when it comes to designing things that I'm going to make fly. You know, I have a couple of targeted goals I have to hit. One, it has to fly good. Two, I have to be able to afford to do it. And three, I need to be able to somewhat easily get the materials and be able to make my own parts or create my own parts. So one of the things that I want to cover here, and I've got a bunch of stuff I want to cover, is the whole thing about how carbon fiber is used and fiberglass is used and wood and different materials are used. And I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. But when you go to buy fiberglass cloth, you can actually buy it all the way down to 0.56 of an ounce. So 0.56 of an ounce is the lightest glass cloth I've been able to buy. And you can buy a fiberglass cloth all the way up to like 54 ounces a square yard. I mean, it's like carpet or quilting. But you need to understand when you're laying up a mechanical when you're creating a mechanical structure, which is a wing or the stabilizer or the fuselage of an airplane, you kind of need to think about what is its how are you going to do that? How are you going to make the wing strong enough without being too heavy? And one of the things that keeps getting really, really under my skin, and I try to not let it to, is everybody thinks that carbon fiber is the save-all for everything. And the bottom line is the lightest fiberglass cloth that I like to use is 5.7 ounces a square yard. Now they do make 3.5 ounce that you can buy, and the 3.5 ounce carbon fiber is pretty light, but think of the difference here for a minute. If you have, let's say, 1/8 inch balsa wood, you laminate that with, let's say, 0.75 fiberglass. You then fill the weave with primer, and then you paint it. You end up with a system that has kind of a said weight to it. And people don't understand when you're building a warbird and you frame it all out and you haven't put any glass cloth on it and the whole warbird weighs 28 pounds, you're like, wow, this is going to be light. But then you're done with it and you're at 40 pounds, you're like, holy crap, where did all that weight come from? Unless you experiment with it, you won't understand this. And I've done it. Balsa wood soaks up resin. So sometimes the thicker the balsa wood you use and the slower cure your resin is, the more that resin will penetrate into the balsa wood. And if you use a heavier cloth, it takes more primer to fill the weave. So I've experimented taking a heavier cloth and then putting 0.75 ounce cloths on top of it so that I won't have to use a lot of primer to fill that. It's still a pretty neat system, but it's still kind of heavy. For me, some of the lightest structures I've ever built is a balsa wood wing with some carbon fiber in there to support the top and bottom spar, and then I cover it in monocoat. And that's been some of my lightest systems I've done. But what I want to do is talk a little bit about the structure of a wing. So many people reach out to me And they say things that are just ridiculous. They're like, well, you know the way you're doing that's not right. And I don't want to be a jerk and say, okay, well, show me how you've done it. Oh, well, I've never done it. Well, then how do you know it's not right? Well, because I know what's light. I know what's strong. I know this. And the bottom line is, if you're not going to test and build and experiment, you really don't know what any of this stuff means. So this is a fiberglass rod that I use for the torsion bars. This fiberglass rod, everybody says, has bending forces, which technically this is a bending force. But the top of it would be in tension when I bend it, and the bottom of it actually goes into compression a little bit. So if I had load cells on this and I bent it, the top's trying to stretch and the bottom's trying to compress. So when you think of a wing, and let's say that they had some kind of carbon fiber that was as light as the lightest fiberglass, which they don't. You could cover the top skin of the wing and the bottom skin of the wing, and when I bend this, the top of the wing would be in tension and the bottom of the wing would be in compression. Carbon fiber doesn't like to be in compression, it only likes to be in tension. Now, if you lay up a whole lot of layers and you use epoxy, like if this entire thing here was carbon fiber, still the bottom's going to go into compression a little bit. But because it's all that resin and everything holding together, that's how you can make like a landing gear strut out of all carbon fiber and it would stay together. But we're talking about wings for a minute. So now let's talk about building an I-beam like this. Okay? And we then start to say, okay, well, what's happening here if I build a wing like this? I have a higher moment between the top and bottom skin. But keep in mind, if this top and bottom skin is a structural part, that's a lot of square inches of structure that you'll have to add weight to make that the strength of the wing. However, if this spar here has laminated carbon fiber on each side of it, and you look at the square inches of carbon fiber, then you think about how many square inches of light fiberglass you have on it, you're now starting to get into that sweet spot of building a light wing. Now, I am talking model airplanes only. If you're going to build a full-scale racer, you could, because of the strength needed and the structure needed, use that up to 11 ounce, well actually you could use up to 19 ounce glass cloth. Because on a plane that weighs 1,400 pounds, it's a completely different scale. I'm talking model airplanes here, and I'm talking model airplanes that are normally 20 feet wingspan or less that are going to weigh under 100 pounds. So when you think of carbon fiber, you need to think about it where you're going to structurally use it. So I'm going to show you a picture here. This is my MSL2 that I made, and this whole airplane weighs 57.9 pounds. So I call it basically 57 or 58 pounds. This plane has a 188-inch wingspan. The wing loading on it is as if it's a glider. Okay? So if you look at this right here, that plane ended up being a monster airplane, but it only weighs 58 pounds. Now, how did I do that? Look at this wing for a minute. So if you look at this wing, the only parts in there that are not balsa wood are the ribs. And I'm not sure how good this is coming through, but my rib number 3 and 5, I hollowed out the entire rib. It's not even touching my wing joiner tube. It's just a big air cavity there. And if you look at all the ribs going out to the wingtip, after where the wing tube ends, those have big air cavities in them. I had so many people come out to me and say, that wing will never work no matter what you do. That wing is going to collapse. That wing is a turd. But if you look at those black lines on it, that's carbon fiber toe that I laminated across the top and bottom of the spar. And I had 2 spars on this airplane because I knew I was going to core out all of those ribs. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you want to truly design for something really light, you have to test your methods. You have to figure out what you're going to do. That airplane, most people said you will not get that under the 77.3 ounce AMA rule. It's going to be an 80-pound airplane at that wingspan. And I just feel like saying, how many airplanes have you built a 188-inch wing? Show me the proof that I'm full of crap. I hate speculation. If you follow my Facebook religiously, you'll see that I really hate it if I say, hey, has anybody ever used epoxy paint? And then I got all these people chiming in going, well, you could try this or this or this. And I'm like, okay, how did it work for you? Oh, I've never used it. I just searched it on Google to try to help you. I can search Google. Don't get me wrong. I love people's feedback, but I want my Facebook to be a learning experience. I want everybody to be able to read something on my Facebook and go, oh, I can go do that now. Because Damon and all of his married people, all the guys and gals in aviation that post things on Damon's Facebook page have already done that. Nobody's just making it up. So I want to get away from the carbon fiber now. Before I leave, I experimented with these carbon fiber propeller blades, okay? So if you look at this, I made the molds and everything to do basically a C-130 prop here. I can't remember the diameter of this. I think this is 18 inches or 16. But this ended up being absolutely awesome. I could run it at 7,000 RPM and throw a towel into it, and it didn't do anything except bend the bolts that hold the props to the shafts. And however, these props, now I'm going to go back to the being light and strong. When you build, how do I say this? If you have a piece of balsa wood, and that balsa wood will hold 5 pounds, and you need 6 pounds on your airplane, and you throw a piece of carbon fiber on, and that will hold 175 pounds, you need to say, wait a minute, did I just build that way too strong, and how much weight did I add to it? So I experimented by doing one layer of 5.7 ounce cloth in the bottom of my mold, one layer on the top of my mold. When I sandwiched this together, I wanted to see how strong just a single 5.7 ounce layer of carbon fiber would be. The props turned fantastic. They were absolutely awesome. Spun them up to, I think, 8,000 RPM, never had a failure. Threw a towel into it, and all the blades broke. But they didn't shatter. They just broke. I mean, I don't know where it really failed, but it just bent the props, and the props were pretty much junk after that. So I needed 2 layers, and that's what this is. Now, if you want to know what a single prop weighed with carbon fiber, which was 1 layer on each, it ended up being 1.2 ounces. That's extremely light. And it was too light, because, when the props worked on the plane, yeah. But if anything would have ever hit those props, I had a chance of buckling the prop. The cool thing about carbon fiber is that fiber, as long as it's in tension, it's hard for it to fly apart. So when I would do my weave on this, I would take my weave to the center and then wrap the weave around where the bolts would go through. That way, I never had a part between any of the fabric. There's never resin holding anything together. It was always the fabric in tension. So when I built this 6-bladed prop out of carbon fiber, and a lot of people ask me, how did I make this? I 3D print the blades. No, I went out and bought 3 APC props, cut the props up, epoxied them to a hub, made the hub, made my mold, laid up the fiberglass. I have spun this 9,400 RPMs, and this is a Ginsu blade. If you ever got into it, it's going to just obliterate your hand or your legs or feet or whatever. But I was really excited about this 6-bladed prop. It worked fantastic. So you ask, well, wait a minute, how heavy is that prop? It might surprise you. This prop weighs 6 ounces. And this is incredible. So carbon fiber has its places. But if you're going to make a whole wing out of carbon fiber, it better be a full-scale airplane, because in a model, you're just going to add weight and have strength you don't even need. So I'm done with the carbon fiber. I hope this makes sense to everybody. And, keep the emails coming. What I'm going to try to do tonight is cover some of this stuff. I've got emails to answer and some design stuff to answer. Another thing was about designing the flap systems I've done. So I'm not sure how good this is going to show up. But this is a flap system that I designed originally in 3ds Max. And I wanted basically to have a Fowler type system without tracks. So I'm not sure if you can see the swing arms in there. But I have 2 swing arms that makes that flap work. And everybody has said, how did you design that flap? Can I make the volume louder? Okay, is that better? Sorry guys if that's too quiet. I thought I had it cranked up to the same level I did the other night. So this flap is something that you just start with, literally with popsicle sticks and a drill, and cutting out some balsa and start drilling holes to kind of understand the geometry, just to get it started in your brain. So I basically built a little model at first of this out of popsicle sticks and some balsa wood. Once I understood where the geometry would be, I went into 3D and started figuring it out what the true radiuses would be. So this was just tinkering around. There's no rocket science here. This is just time and patience. Okay? So that was the flap. The other thing I want to talk about was the materials of 3D printing. Okay, cool, Norman. I just want to make sure you guys can hear. And hey, Rick, hey, everybody who's saying hi and everything. 3D printing is really, sure, it's not in its infancy. It's been around since Jay Leno helped guys come up with it to build car parts. And I'm not, don't quote me on that. I just know the very first time I ever heard of it was watching Jay Leno's garage when he 3D printed a connecting rod from a 3D scan of another connecting rod, and that's how he made it work. So, but I want to give you an example. Let me turn this on. So on my freEMMAstein behind me, I'm going to have very small ailerons because I'm going to have huge flaps, but I'm going to have spoilers on the wings. If you ever seen the Mitsubishi MU2 or you've seen the B52, they have spoilers that helps the roll control. So what I'm doing here is, and let me hook this up. So what I'm doing here, if you can see this, let me try to get this close enough to you all. So when I move my stick, this is my spoiler. Now normally it's only going to come up and down like this during normal flight, but when I land and I want to stick it to the runway, they'll go all the way up to here just like a jumbo jet. But I'm not sure how good you can see this work, but this is my spoiler system. So when I was developing the spoiler system, and this is actually the spoilers here, and I'm not sure how good you can see this, but this is 3D printed with 2 big circles, and this is 3D printed with a bunch of small circles. The key thing is the thickness here was 1.1 millimeter and 0.5 millimeter. This here is 0.7 millimeter and 0.25 millimeter. So if I weigh these, the first one I did, which felt heavy to me, was 2.2 ounces. So this is 2.2 ounces, and this one here is 1.4 ounces. That's a huge difference. Strength-wise, they're almost, I mean, they're virtually the same. It's just all these little circles. I'm not going to go into all that, but basically this is about half the weight of this, but it's going to do the same function. It's just playing around with your design in 3D. And the way the spoiler is going to work, now keep in mind, this is only one of 8 spoilers on each wing. Okay, so there's 16 spoilers on this airplane. Each wing has 8. They're going to be controlled in pairs of 2. So just like a jumbo jet, depending on how much you're putting into it, you're going to see my spoilers move at different deflections, which I'm just going to try to mimic what I see on YouTube on wing videos. I'm not going to do the math or try to research how much each spoiler is supposed to deflect. So that is what I wanted to cover about that. I need to look at my notes. And, oh, okay. Developing processes that work. I showed earlier how I like to make firewalls. Oh, hang on, I need to shut off my radio. I showed you earlier that I had some of this honeycomb that I picked up. It's aviation grade phenolic honeycomb. I don't know what it's even called or what the FAR thing for aviation is about it, but it's just honeycomb. And I used 2 layers of 3/4 ounce glass cloth on plexiglass, which I got over there. And so I had 2 skins, and I laminated it together using Gorilla Glue, squeegeed it on, and as you can hear, it's really strong. So, but I did 6 of these with different layers of glass cloth, the different thicknesses of honeycomb until I found what worked. So if you're really trying to build something ultra light and ultra strong, you're going to have to experiment. And it's just throwing stuff away. You can't keep it all. I've got a storage building that's, I don't know, 8 feet wide by 30 deep, and it's just full of airplane crap and a couple of dirt bikes. And then I had a lot of questions asked. When I was early on developing the B-36, I was going to have the jet engines out on the wings. This was the very first prototype. The last prototype is about half this weight. This thing is heavier than crap. Has a couple of the, oh, I can't remember. Bob's RC, I think it was. The guy used to make the really cool little ducted fans. So they had 2 ducted fans. I put them in the front so they look like turbines. But the way I made this was I built completely out of balsa wood this as a plug. Now this came off because there's 2 screws here that holds on the pylon. But this entire body I made so I could pull it out of a mold. This was 3 layers of 2-ounce glass cloth, which was way overkill. I then had some bulkheads in here made out of plywood, way overkill. I'm not sure how good you can look down the inside of the pipe there, but I made the inner ducting on a piece of hardwood, glassed it, did a reverse mold and pulled it off, put it into here, and this gave, I think, about 6 pounds of thrust, or 5.5 pounds of thrust, which was kind of cool. Now, I've already had a lot of people saying, why don't I mount these to the freEMMAstein and the wings? I'm not going to do that, but I might build some little bitty nacelles that hang out there and put these ducted fans in it and have 4 a turning and 4 a burning. But this is a disaster. So I just wanted to share something. I don't even think this scale will measure how much this thing weighs, because it'll probably go off this scale. Oh, no, it doesn't. So this is 44 ounces. So this is 44 ounces. This is a lead sled. This is just a fat pig. But I wanted to show that you can get completely through basically with the design and test it, and then you start looking at it and you start realizing, you know, I made that way too heavy. This sounds really weird, but it says, know why you are building what you are building. And I want you to think about this for a minute. When you like I said earlier, when I was talking about wing design, I've actually designed 23 wings now. This wing will be my number 23. The freEMMAstein had 3 goals. I wanted it to be as cheap as possible. I wanted to be able to fly it in the shortest amount of time. And I wanted it to have a wow factor. I mean, something that somebody looks at and they get out of the car and looks at it sitting out on the runway and goes, what in the hell is that thing? You know, and the fact that it's going to be camouflage with all the German markings, all the pilots for it are like, I don't know, 1/32 scale. So that thing's going to look like it's got a 700-yard wingspan to scale. This airplane is not supposed to be sexy looking. It's not supposed to be scale looking. It's not supposed to have a great finish. It's just supposed to be a utility plane. So what I'm saying is, if you start off to build a project, and I've seen this happen many times. It's happened to me. I mean, this is a disease. You start on a project and it starts to turn out so good, you say, oh wow, I'm going to make this really scale. You need to look back and say, why did I start to build this? If you're building a Thunderbolt, and you love the way a Thunderbolt flies because of the big wing, you love the way a Thunderbolt flies because of the way it looks, and you get 90% done with it and it's looking great, just finish it and fly it. Don't go back and go, oh gosh, I got to detail this for the next year, because you're going to add a boatload of weight. If you did not start your design going to be light, and you get to the 90% of your design and say, oh, I'm going to now make it so scale that I want people to just freak out. They're already going to freak out. It's a Thunderbolt. People go nuts over Thunderbolts. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I've failed at this. I've had 2 projects where I got halfway through them and said, wow, I've got to take this to the nth power because they're so beautiful, and they started getting heavy. And I had a 50% pitch that exact same thing happened to. And I actually redesigned the wings and redesigned the stabs and took 5 pounds out of that airplane. Because when I did the web stitching and all the stuff on the wings, I just added a boatload of weight that they didn't need, because it was a half scale pitch that had the wow factor. Now I'm going to get into some emails. I'm trying to keep this down to less than 30 minutes, but I see that I'm probably going to blow that time. I already addressed the carbon fiber. Designing structures, there is so much on the internet about how bridges work, how I-beams work, how all that kind of stuff works. Immerse yourself in that, and then start Googling airframe design. And most of the airframe design stuff is going to cover how big your wings got to be, how big your stabs got to be, for how far back they are from the wing or the center of gravity. Most of those design things you can Google and find on the internet. Talks about the basic physical makeup of the airplane. It doesn't really talk that much about materials. But I'll tell you where you can't go wrong. A carbon fiber spar or tube is pretty much idiot proof if you can build it into your wing. If you don't care about scale looks, I've actually seen, I know a guy that built a really cool big P-51, but it's basically got a Piper Cub Clark Y airfoil on it. And unless you look at it close, you can't tell, but that airplane doesn't tip stall. It flies absolutely beautiful, okay? So that when it comes to designing structures, you just need to understand, I mean, the most important thing I've learned about everything I've designed is the top of the wing's in tension when it's sitting on the ground, and the bottom's in compression. But when it's flying, the bottom of the wing's in tension, and the top of the wing's in compression, okay? If you watch some of my MSL2 videos online, where I have the camera mount on the tip, you can see when I'm pulling loops that the wingtips are going up and down, and they deflect about 1.5 inches. The way I tested the MSL to know the wings were strong enough, you flip the fuselage upside down, and you mount, you basically support the fuselage the best you can, and then you start putting sandbags. Well, I took those gallon Ziploc bags and actually filled them full of water softener salt. Now you want to lay a blanket on the wing, because a water softener salt can put little dimples in your balsa wood wing if you're not careful. If you can use play sand, it's best. I just didn't have play sand. I just happened to have 200 pounds of water softener salt, so I used that. So I ended up having, I think, 30 bags. Yeah, I had 60 bags total. And what I did was I went online and I looked at basically how to load a wing to show what its aerodynamic forces are. And if you look at the way wings are designed, sometimes the reason they're tapered is because the farther out you actually want less load on the spar because the moment arm's longer. That's the reason a lot of wings get tapered at the outside. Now there's some aerodynamic things that help too, but you're keeping the spar kind of semi-constantly loaded by having that taper. So I took all that into account. I loaded it up to, I think, 5.1 Gs. I had 1.5 inch deflections on each wing, which I call an overall 3 inch deflection. Didn't want to break the wing. So I don't know when I fly the airplane if I'm getting anywhere near 5.5 Gs, but I know in the back of my head that I can fly that airplane, and if I see the wings bending too much, I'm probably exceeding the Gs. Why pink foam? I've gotten this email, and I'm trying to answer them all, but I'm going to try to cover it in this. The reason I picked pink foam on this airplane is because it's cheap. I found it's really easy to router. It's really easy to take an X-Acto knife and carve it. I mean, this is the coolest stuff in the world to take an X-Acto knife to. If you want to make, like my new elevators, these new elevators, not sure how you can see this, but basically I made the hinge a entire rib with this flat spot, and it has to be countersunk into the foam. So I took an X-Acto knife, cut that out, and then went down the side of it before this was glued on, and it's just the perfect slot for that to go into. Now, if you saw my video the other day where I went nuts because my elevators were way too heavy, and it was because of the primer and the resin and everything. Now, these haven't been covered in glass yet, and I'm going to use a polyurethane, and then I'm just going to put my paint on. I'm not even going to prime it. But right now, these are weighing, which is really freaking cool. This right now weighs 5.1 ounces. So I don't know if I'm going to hit my 7 ounce, which is my target, but if I'm under 9, I'm happy. The 11.5 was a mental thing that made me mad. Would it have worked at 11.5? Probably, but it just isn't what I wanted to do. Why no balsa in this airplane was another email I got. Money. I'm trying to build this entire airframe. The entire airframe. I'm not including radio. I'm talking just styrofoam, glue, glass cloth, and polyurethane for $175. And I don't think I'm going to do it. I think it's going to be about $275 when I'm done. Because I've accidentally screwed up a lot of foam experimenting. But actually in the airframe will probably be about $175. Radio and programming. I got a really incredible email, and if the person watches this that wrote it, I appreciate the email and I try to answer it. But the email was probably 2,000 characters or words, 2,000 words probably. So it was really, really deep. I'm going to make this really, really simple, how I design and program radios for an airplane like this. Before I put any of the servos into the airplane, I draw a riser diagram, which is a line diagram that shows where every servo is in the airplane and every wire that goes to that servo. And, you know, I'm using the S-bus, so I use these neat little SPD1s here. And if you don't know S-bus, the really cool thing about S-bus is if you take this SPD1, you can take a programmer, plug the programmer into it, and you can tell this to be channel 16, 15, and 14, okay? So one wire will run all the way through the airplane, basically like a network cable. It will run to these, and it will run a standard servo. Now, if you have an S-bus servo, you don't need this. You just program that servo to know what channel it is. But I love these things. I've got like 8 of these, and they're going to be placed out through the entire airplane. But basically, back to answer the question, I take that riser diagram and I lay it out on this table. I lay out every SPD1. I lay out all my batteries, all my servos. I know what the servo is supposed to do, and I sit here and program it all in front of me on the table before I put anything in the airplane. So my spoiler servos, everything, I start moving the sticks. I get into my mixing, I get into everything, I get the nose gear steering, I get everything basically working. Now, I may have to reverse it, and that's no big deal. But at least I know the channel. In the industry I work in, we call it patching. But I think here we just call it, you know, assigning the servo to the channel. But I lay everything out in front of me so that I can sit here and watch it work. Because when you start putting in an airplane and you start to plug something into you know, the lead, and it doesn't work, you don't know in your mind, did I not plug in that wire? Is that wire not assigned right? You know, what's going on? So I would really say on an airplane that's going to have, hang on a minute, I can't remember now, it's 4 and 4. So that's 8, 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, I'm going to have about 28 to 30 servos in this airplane. So you really need to be able to map something like that out on a table so you can see it and play with it for a couple of nights, get all your mixes right. And that was the last email question I have. And I think I covered everything. So I hope this helps everybody. I'm trying to figure out a way to be able to answer all the questions I get. You know, just do me a favor. If you are on my Facebook and you see where questions are being asked, please raise your hand and say, Damon or team or followers, I have done that, I've used this, and these are my results. Post a picture. People will always private message me pictures of stuff they're doing. I'm like, post that on my Facebook. I want everybody to see it. So, but speculation kills me. It drives me nuts. I mean, I've been part of new product development and developing systems for over 20 years, and I cannot tell you how much money is wasted because somebody had a good idea, but nobody ever really thought about, will that work? You have no idea how many people have said some of the craziest things. Oh, I'm going to get my airplane to do this. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, you know, good luck. I mean, there's certain things we know you just can't do. Now, I'm surprised all the time. I tell you what they're doing with the controllers and planes, they're doing with the quads, and they're doing with the helicopters, and that Harrier out there that's basically getting ready to fly, that big Harrier. Those are the coolest things I've ever seen. But I would never have said, oh, that can't be done. But somebody saying that, I'm trying to think of something that was asked of me that was just really, really interesting. Oh yeah, somebody was talking about taking, and I know what you're going to think when I finish this. Somebody wanted to take 4 EDF F4 Phantoms and basically tell them all to talk to each other so they could fly exactly like Blue Angels. And I'm talking about exact. So the lead airplane you're flying as a pilot, the other 4 are chasing you. And because of radio waves and all that stuff, you could fly them all four as one airplane. Maybe that will happen one day soon. I know with drones that they do it like the Super Bowl and everything. They've got 800 drones and they're all spelling letters and circles up there. But I kind of think that they've got a little bit more funding than us model airplane people do. And to get four F4s to fly exactly 4 inches apart, I think it's going to be really hard to do. In my industry all the time, I look at things that people start to work on and they're like, oh, it's going to do this. In the back of my mind, I'm like, if that was going to be done, it would have been done 20 years ago. But some people just don't want to listen. They want to go down that path to failure. And if they learn it, great. But I don't like to see them learn it at the other people's cost. None of us are rich. None of us have unlimited funds. And I know people that have bought stuff and emailed me and said, well, this doesn't do at all what I was told it would do. I'm like, well, return it. So I'm going to quit getting so chatty on you. It's just I'm so passionate about this hobby and people doing it right the first time and people helping each other. I'm really tired of people saying, oh, that's going to be heavy, or oh, I know enough that that's not going to work. And then it works. You don't know how many people told me the MSL2 wings wouldn't work. And it's I've got 44 flights on it now and it's working great. So thanks for watching my videos, everybody. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover tonight. The carbon fiber was the biggest thing that's getting me because everybody's like, well, everything should be made out of carbon fiber. Well, that's not true, or it would be. So thanks for watching my videos, everybody, and have an awesome night. Sorry the volume was a little bit low at the beginning. I'm going to make sure that I know where that's set at for tonight. And if you have any questions, just send me a private message or send me an email. And if you're not on Facebook and you're watching this through YouTube, sorry that you're not able to do Facebook. I know some of you still wear your tinfoil hats and don't want to come to Facebook, and that's fine, okay? I'm not knocking anybody that doesn't do it. But, you just don't get to watch this live. And my intentions aren't to do this live. It just kind of ends up being fun. So you all have an awesome night. I doubt I'll do an update tomorrow night. I doubt I'll do one Sunday, but sometimes I just get a wild feeling and I'll do one. So I'll try to give you a warning if you want to watch it live. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful weekend. Keep the questions coming. And if you have any questions, there are no dumb questions. Just people that are too scared to ask the questions. So take it easy, everybody. Rock on.